Allelic relationships are classified as a dominance and recessive, codominance, and sex-linked trait. So we are going to emphasize on dominance and recessive allelic relationship in which recessive allele cannot express in the presence of dominance allele. For example, white fur color is represented by capital B, is dominant over the black fur color is represented by lowercase b. So here, for example, if there is a homozygous allele, so two identical allele for capital B, so that will produce white fur color. While if this is heterozygous variety, capital B, lowercase b, so the lowercase b will be hidden in the presence of capital B. So it means the lowercase b is a recessive allele, so the capital B is dominant allele. So lowercase b can only express itself in the absence of capital B, and that's homozygous recessive variety. So here we are going to see example of monohybrid cross. In a monohybrid cross, the white is a dominant trait over the black variety. Now homozygous dominant is the white variety, so we're going to take as a parent one homozygous dominant capital B, and homozygous recessive with a black fur color lowercase b. Now male will produce the one type of sperm, while female will produce the single type of egg. Now capital B of sperm will fertilize with the lowercase b egg, and it will produce zygote with heterozygous variety. Now in this F1 generation, the all F1 generation will be heterozygous. So now this F1 generation is a heterozygous. We cannot pick parent 2 from F1 generation. So we will take one male from F1 generation as a parent 2, so and one female from F1 generation as a parent 2. We will put them together in one cage and wait for the F2 generation, and we'll identify if this is heterozygous dominant and recessive variety in a parent 2, what will be the ratio in the F2 generation. So in this F2 generation, we will get hybrid breeding variety. Now this hybrid breeding variety, so the one parent is a heterozygous, while the second parent is also heterozygous. So the male will produce two different type of the gamete, while the female will produce two different type of gamete. Now the gamete, the sperm with capital B can also fertilize with the capital B, can also fertilize with a lowercase b. So we're going to calculate the 100% probability. So the capital B can fertilize with the lowercase capital B of female egg, and that will produce homozygous dominant, while the capital B can fertilize with a lowercase b, and that will produce heterozygous, while the lowercase b sperm can fertilize with a capital B, and that will produce heterozygous, while the lowercase b sperm can fertilize with the lowercase b egg and produce homozygous recessive variety. Their phenotypic expressions will be capital B will produce the white fur color, heterozygous will also produce white fur color, while homozygous recessive will produce black fur color. So their ratio will be phenotypic ratio, 3 will be white, while the 1 is the black, and 75% is the white, while the 25% is black. So the simple whole number ratio will be 3:1. While the genetic value or a genotypic ratio will be 25% is a homozygous dominant, 50% is heterozygous, and 25% is a homozygous recessive. So simple whole number ratio will be 1:1. So we got the result in F2 generations. So if we have a dominant and recessive allele, so in F1 generation, all will be heterozygous with a dominant trait. While in F2 generation, 1/4 will be homozygous dominant, 2/4 will be heterozygous, while 1/4 will be homozygous recessive. We're going to understand same example by the Punnett scale. So this example we can represent by the Punnett scale. For example, if you take pure breeding variety or a two breeding variety is a homozygous dominant one parent or homozygous recessive another parent. So the male homozygous dominant will produce two different type of the sperm. So no, they are producing same type of the sperm. For example, we're going to take of a homozygous dominant variety. So this homozygous variety will produce only one type of sperm, while homozygous recessive variety will produce only one type of egg. So this one type of sperm and one type of egg in a Punnett scale. So one side we will take male, while another side we will take female. Now, the egg with the lowercase can fertilize with the capital B of the male sperm, and in this way, this will produce this relationship heterozygous, while lowercase b egg can fertilize with the capital B sperm, and it will produce heterozygous. And in this way, that will produce the heterozygous variety. Their phenotypic result will be 100% the heterozygous with dominant trait. So we're going to take one male and one female from F1 generation, and we will interbreed them together in one cage, and we shall find the F2 generation. In F2 generations, we're going to take parent 2 hybrid variety. So one is male, which is producing the two different type of sperm, while female is producing two different type of egg. Now, egg capital B can also fertilize with the capital B of sperm, while capital B can also fertilize with lowercase b of sperms. So when it will fertilize with a capital B, this will produce homozygous dominant. Capital B can fertilize with the lowercase b, produce heterozygous. This lowercase b, the egg can fertilize with a capital B of sperm, produce heterozygous, while lowercase b can fertilize with a lowercase b, produce homozygous recessive variety. Their phenotypic expressions will be the white fur color. Here, if there's a capital B is present, that will produce white fur color, while exceptionally, if there's a homozygous recessive variety, so that will produce black fur color. Their phenotypic expression will be 3 are white, while the 1 is black. So 75% is homozygous dominant. So this is going to produce 75% is with the dominant trait, while 25% is recessive trait. So in this way, that phenotypic ratio will be 3:1. While the genotypic ratio, when we calculate the genotypic ratio will be, so that is a 1:2:1, 25% homozygous dominant, and 50% heterozygous, while 25% homozygous recessive. So F1 generation, all heterozygous with dominant trait, while F2 generation, so 1/4 is a homozygous dominant, 2/4 is a heterozygous, while 1/4 will be homozygous recessive. So in this way, we got idea. So we are going to solve similar example from one layout. So this layout is given in exam sheet. So might possible in exam, this layout will be given, and you're supposed to draw same cross by following this layout. So the parent 1 phenotype, we are representing the white fur color is a dominant over the black fur color. Now, in this way, the parent 1 genotype, that's the given there. So capital B, while the genotype of the black fur color, that's the lowercase b. Now, that will produce single type of the gamete. The male produce single type of sperm, while female produce one type of egg. They fertilize together and produce heterozygous variety. So F1 generation will be 100% heterozygous with the dominant trait. We're going to select the 1 male and 1 female from F1 generation as a parent 2, and these both will be heterozygous. Now, these both parents will produce two different type of gamete. So male will produce the two different type of sperm, capital B and lowercase b, while the female will produce two different type of egg, capital B and lowercase b. Now, this capital B can fertilize with a capital B, and it will produce the homozygous dominant, while capital B egg can fertilize with the lowercase b of sperm and produce heterozygous, while this capital B can fertilize with a lowercase b, and that lowercase b can fertilize with a lowercase b. Now here, the capital B and capital B will produce the white fur color, and if there's a capital B is present, that will produce white fur color. While in heterozygous, lowercase b will stay hidden, while homozygous recessive will produce black fur color. So here, the phenotypic ratio is the 3:1, while the genotypic ratio will be 1:2:1. How did we calculate the genotypic ratio? So in this genotypic ratio, so if there is a homozygous dominant, so this will be 25%, while heterozygous will be 50%, while homozygous recessive black fur color is 25%. So in this way, the simple whole number ratio will be 1:2:1. We're going to solve the question relevant to this example. The chart shows the inheritance of fur color in a small mammal. If the allele for white fur color is dominant, which animal must be heterozygous for the gene controlling the fur color? So for example, if there is the dominant, so white fur color is a dominant, is the clue for us. So here we consider like white fur color is a dominant and the black is a recessive. So the black will be the lowercase b, while the white might be the capital B mean homozygous, or it may be heterozygous. But what we can say homozygous because F1 generation 100% is with the dominant trait. So A is going to be homozygous. Now we're going to see like if A is capital B, that will produce one type of gamete, and the B female will produce only one type of gamete. They fertilize together and produce heterozygous, the white variety. So if F1 generation is only heterozygous white variety, so we can say, so C is heterozygous. Why? Because all F1 generation is heterozygous. But the second clue is also valuable when the one member from F1 generation fertilized with a homozygous recessive variety and the result is coming 50-50%. This shows like F1 generation all are heterozygous, so the parent A is homozygous dominant. So we're going to solve another example. Now in this example, we're going to take parent one generation as capital G is the gray variety is a homozygous dominant, while the lowercase g is the black variety, or that's a charcoal variety, is a homozygous recessive. Now this true breeding variety will produce single type of gamete, while the female will produce single type of egg. Now they fertilize together and produce 100% F1 heterozygous gray variety. We're going to pick one male and one female from F1 as a parent 2, and these both are heterozygous. So these both parents will produce the two different type of gametes. So male produce two different type of sperm, while the female will produce two different type of egg. So we're going to calculate the result by Punnett scale. So one side, we're going to put the sperm and other side egg. Now this capital G gamete can fertilize with a capital G of the sperm and can also fertilize with a lowercase g of the sperm. And in the same way, the lowercase g can go with a capital G, can also go with a lowercase g. And we calculate the phenotypic ratio. So if the capital G is present, this will produce the gray variety here. That's a gray variety. This is a gray variety. And that is producing homozygous recessive charcoal. So phenotypic ratio will be 3:1, while the genotypic ratio is 1:2:1. And a phenotypic ratio 3 mean the three are gray when one is black variety or a charcoal variety. So in this way, the ratio will become 3:1. While the genotypic ratio we calculated, so for example, if this is homozygous dominant, 25%, heterozygous is 50%, and homozygous recessive is 25%. So in this way, we will get the result, the phenotypic one, 3:1, and the genotypic result is 1:2:1. We're going to take this example in plant. So the tall plant is dominant over a dwarf plant. So if the tall plant is represented by the capital T, while the dwarf plant is represented with the lowercase t. Now, this true breeding variety will produce the single type of gamete which fertilize together and produce heterozygous tall plant. So F1 generations, all plant will be tall. So we're going to select one plant as a male while other plant as a female. So mean from one plant we shall use pollen grain, while another plant we shall use ovules. Now, these both variety will be heterozygous, mean hybrid variety, and they will produce two different type of gametes. So male will produce two different type of the pollen grain, while the female will produce two different type of ovules. Now we're going to fertilize together. So capital D can go with the capital T, while capital T can go with the lowercase t. In the same way, the lowercase t can go with the capital T, and the ovule of a lowercase t can go with the pollen grain of lowercase t. Now here, that's going to produce tall, and 3 are tall, and 1 is short. So in this way, the phenotypic ratio will be 3:1. And the genotypic ratio is 1:2:1, mean homozygous dominant. That is 25%. Heterozygous, this is 50%, while homozygous dominant recessive is 25%. And in this way, the simple whole number ratio will be 1:2:1. We're going to solve the questions relevant to this monohybrid cross. For example, in a pea plant, the allele for the tall T is a dominant to the allele for dwarf T. So here, these two key points are given there. So if there's a dominant and a dwarf T, that's a given there. So now which cross will produce the plant proportion of 50-50%? So now, on the basis of the test cross, we got idea, like if we're going to take one parent that is heterozygous, while the recessive trait with a homozygous recessive, the result will be 50-50%. So for example, we're going to take a one parent heterozygous, which will produce two different type of gamete, capital T, lowercase t, while homozygous recessive will produce only single type of gamete. They fertilize together. Capital T can fertilize with the lowercase t. This will produce heterozygous, while the lowercase t can fertilize with the lowercase t. This will produce homozygous, lowercase t. And in this way, that will produce the tall and dwarf. So 50-50% result, mean the result is coming one tall, one dwarf. So in that way, that will be our answer. So one parent is heterozygous, while another parent is homozygous recessive. We're going to take another example here. So now this in another example, what will be the genotype of offspring resulting from genetic cross between the two individuals, one of which is homozygous dominant. If this is a homozygous dominant, so this one is a given there, like homozygous dominant, capital T. So this is the hint for you, while the other is a heterozygous. So the parent genotype is represented in the questions. So one parent is a homozygous, mean capital T, while other parent is a heterozygous, mean capital T, lowercase t. If they fertilize together, so the one parent will produce only one type of gamete, while capital T is a homozygous, will produce only the T, while the heterozygous will produce two different type of gamete. So the capital T can go with the capital T, while lowercase t can go with the capital T. So this will produce heterozygous variety. So all will be tall. So here A is our relevant answer. So that type of questions might possible. We're going to take another example here. For example, the tongue rolling is a dominant trait over the tongue non-rolling. So if you can roll the tongue, you are the dominant over the people who cannot roll the tongue. So in this way, if this is a dominant and recessive trait, so we can expect the F1 generation will be 100% rolling with heterozygous. While if we can take the parent 2 from F1 generations, so then F2 generation, we can expect the phenotype will be 3:1, while the genotypic result will be 1:2:1. So we're going to check that how we can prove this type of the result here. So in this way, F1 generation is going to be parent, capital R, capital R. So that is producing single type of the gamete here. So one type of sperm, while it's producing one type of egg here. They will fertilize together and produce heterozygous variety with 100% rolling. So we're going to pick the parent two from the F1 generation. So rolling and rolling heterozygous variety, and this will produce two different type of sperm, and female will produce two different type of egg. And this will fertilize together. For example, the capital R egg can also fertilize with a capital R sperm, can also go with a lowercase r. So this probability, when we calculate, so we can get this idea. So 3 will be rolling, while the 1 is non-rolling. So result will be phenotypic result 3:1, while the genotypic result will be 1:2:1. So mean capital R, homozygous dominant, that will produce 25%, while heterozygous will produce 50%, while the homozygous recessive, this will produce 25% of result. So here we are going to solve the questions relevant to, so the pure breeding black feather chicken are mated with a pure breeding white feather chicken. So one is variety is a black feather, other variety is a white feather. Now, all of the individual in the offspring F1 generation have a black feather. Now, this black feather is our hint. So it means the black feather is a dominant. So what will be the ratio of the offspring phenotype when two of the F1 generation chicken are crossed? So for example, F1 will be 100% heterozygous, that's number one. And number two, the black feather is dominant over white feather. So we can expect in F2 generations, for example, if there's a heterozygous variety male, that will produce two different type of the gamete, while in female, that will produce two different type of egg. Now, capital B can go with a capital B, and then capital B can go with a lowercase b. So this result will be the 3 are black. Why? Because the capital B is present in 3 boxes, while lowercase b will produce a white. So the result is coming 3 black and 1 white will be result. So here, with the help of this idea, we can get our answer. So if there's a dominant and recessive trait, so the F1 generation will be 100% heterozygous, and F2 generation will be with the genotypic ratio 1:2:1, while the phenotypic ratio will be 3:1. So we're going to move to another example. In some plant, the capital H is a dominant allele, so for the hairy stem, and the lowercase h is a recessive allele for the smooth stem. So here, this hint is given there, like capital H is dominant over the lowercase h. So the pair of these plants produce 37 offspring. So if the total offspring is 37 and 18 with a hairy stem and the 19 with a smooth stem, so we can say that the 18 is a hairy and the 19, so there's no big difference between. So it means there's just going to be 50-50% ratio. So here, for example, hairy, so we're going to take of a heterozygous, smooth, we're going to take of homozygous, recessive variety. So in this way, hairy stem, we're going to take of the heterozygous, and that will produce two different type of the gamete. So while the homozygous recessive will produce only one type of gamete. So the capital H can fertilize with a lowercase h, and that will produce heterozygous variety. While lowercase h can fertilize with a lowercase h, and that will produce homozygous recessive. And the result is coming 50% is hairy, while the 50% is smooth. So our answer will be the one parent is a heterozygous, while other parent is the homozygous recessive. How we got this idea? For example, when we take the 18:19, so overall result is coming 50-50%. So that is 1 point. So second, the question, in an animal, the allele for straight fur color is the dominant to the allele for curly fur color. So the pair of these animals, the mate, and have 9 offspring with a straight fur color and the 3 with the curly fur color. So the F represent the allele for straight fur color, and while the lowercase f is representing the allele for curly fur color. So here, what are the most likely the genotype of the parents? So here, we have given the one key point here. So when we are observing the straight fur color is a dominant over the curly fur color. That's the one key point. 9 offspring with a straight fur color, while the 3 with a curly fur color. So when we can take the ratio of the 9:3, so this will become 3:1. So the examiner is giving us like 3:1 mean the phenotypic ratio is 3:1. So it means the parents are heterozygous. So we're going to take like this parent, the male is a heterozygous that will produce 2 different type of gamete. Female heterozygous will produce 2 different type of gamete, and they will produce that following type of results. So if the capital F is present, this will produce the straight fur color. So there are 3 straight fur color and 1 the curly fur color. So the ratio is becoming 3:1. So in this way, our both parents are heterozygous variety. Now we're going to move to the structured type of question. So complete the genetic diagram to determine the genotype of a parent plant of all the offspring from the cross or all are the tall plant. Now here, if the offspring is all is tall, so what will be the parent genotype, what type of gamete it will produce, and the offspring genotype and offspring phenotype we are supposed to calculate. So the main result is all offspring is with a tall variety. So in this way, we're going to take as a parent the capital T, so as a homozygous dominant, while the dwarf variety will be homozygous recessive. Now, this parent will produce 2 different one type of gamete. For example, if there's a homozygous, this will produce capital T, one type of gamete, while the dwarf variety will produce 1 type of gamete. So they will fertilize together, so that will be 100% the heterozygous, while an offspring phenotype will be 100% tall. So in this way, we can get idea. So here, in this lessons, we studied about the monohybrid cross, and we studied a different example of monohybrid cross. Hopefully, it will be beneficial for you. If you feel any problems, you can dig out the further more topic by studying the basic terminology or the prerequisite for the monohybrid cross. So there are prerequisite terminology. Another video is also advisable. So we can also go through once again for monohybrid cross. Thank you.